I loved him. I still love him, I know what kind of person he is, and I know that he joined the Marines. And by the way, he tried to join a year early, and they wouldn't take him, So does he hate the United States? Because they'll mention that he was reading communist literature. He planned to pose as a communist type person from the beginning after seeing Philbrick's I Led 3 Lives. So yes, he read communist material. But what they don't say is he also read Hobbes, he read Jefferson, he read all the Founding Fathers stuff. They never mention that.
Yeah, they conveniently just frame him out and, label him a communist sympathizer, lone nut kook guy. And anybody that's even studied the assassination knows that there was no way that Lee could have shot JFK from the school book depository with a piece of crap Mannlicher Carcano rifle. The Hungarian army used to call them the humanitarian rifle, Judyth, because
yeah, exactly.
You couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with it. So it's just the physics of, just like 9/11, the physics of the shooting, the ballistics don't match up with anything. It's just the official story, it doesn't match up. If you Fletcher Prouty talked about if you used one of those the ballistic lasers to trace the path or whatever, like the crime scene investigators do, it would be if you used a little stick and now it would be a laser or whatever. But if you did it, it would be up something like 3 feet up and like 4 feet to the left of actually supposedly where the sniper's nest was. So it's just ridiculous to even think about. To think that the government is telling the truth. It's just utterly ridiculous.
Well, we could go on and on about how they've messed up the evidence and all that. Anybody who's truly honest, do not trust like John McAdams in anything they say. Before they could spell my name, they were attacking me. It was amazing. And but those are the kind of things that you're going to expect. I expected that. What I didn't expect is that anybody would absolutely lie, take my emails or things and change them. And then when I say what it was, then they say, what the truth was, they say I changed my story. That's really disgusting. And that's happened to me a number of times. We have a real problem with people being easily led in this country. We've got to start caring. We've got to care about the Kennedy assassination, because those who took over the country brought in their own kind, and you can trace them from there. That's the clue to what's happened to our country today. Trace who they gave power to, who they allowed to run for president. When I look at Obama, he was taken to the woodshed. I wonder if he was shown the Zapruder film showing how, Kennedy's head got blown to pieces. Because he is, as you know, he's brought in everybody who ruined the country, ruined us anyway, financially. They're all in power again, all over again. Well, there can't be change as long as these people are running things behind the scenes.
Kennedy really wanted to change this country, and I'm not saying he was a perfect person.
No, but this is a man who had no ulterior motive. He ran for president because he cared about the country. He had no reason. He was rich. He didn't have to do that. And by the way, he wrote more than just Profiles in Courage. He wrote a number of books. I think 4 or 5 books. We never hear about them. They're wonderful. So there's a lot about Kennedy that still can be discovered, and it should be. And when you do, you get more and more admiration for this man, what he was as a politician. Ben Franklin is admired by everybody, even though he slept with French women, when he was in France. See, we have to, and his wife was still, what I'm saying. So we have may have moral problems on one level, but we're not, when we're talking about what that man did for our country. In the same way, you're going to find some flaws or things with Lee Oswald. I do not go to those places necessarily. I go to show you what kind of man this was who really did love his country. And it's important to understand what kind of man it was that was blamed for killing, said that he's the one that killed Kennedy when he cared about Kennedy and he tried to save his life. That's the irony of it. They had to shoot him.
Well, he knew too much. He had to go, and he's the perfect patsy. I mean, why not blame everything? Look what they had set him up And he even you said yourself that he spoke in July of '63 to you about the fact
Absolutely.
that he felt that he was going to be set up as a patsy to take the fall for Kennedy's murder. Correct?
He could see it coming. He had attempted to rise higher in the CIA, and they put it off. And he told me he recognized after going to Spring Hill, where he gave a talk and he gave information. By the way, the Kennedy sent a priest there to Spring Hill to that conference, which is described in that interactive timeline that Lee gave a talk for 30 minutes. When Lee gave a talk that lasted over an hour. And then he had 20 minutes of questions and answers, so they minimize everything he does or did. You see, Lee is concerned because he is not allowed to move forward in the company. And he told me there time may come when I would have to denounce him if things got too bad. He wouldn't be able to protect me anymore. And it's just dreadful. He didn't want to tell me these things. Read the book. You'll see also many, many instances of things that happen. One thing accidentally left out of the book is it's the American Express. He asked me to buy an American Express check for him to pay for his it was an office in Bannister's building there, the Newman building. And it was just for 1 month's rent. He needed that to have an actual address. Of course, that was 544 Camp Street. So I have that document, but what's not in the book accidentally is the letter that he wrote for the same, about that $30 check, and that he got an office that he wrote to the FPCC, the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. And I have many small amounts of things like that. There's various little pieces of evidence that I saved showing the relationship between him and the jobs that he was asked to do, by the CIA and the FBI. He worked for both of them. He said he was borrowed by the CIA. I suspect he was ONI before that. Lee was so intent on getting into the USSR, and he very proudly told me that 4 days before his birthday, he actually made it. He wanted to enter the USSR while he was still a teenager, and he managed to do that by 4 days. They talk about, he didn't have certain scars. One scar was removed. He was in a hospital in Minsk, and with so-called ear problem. Part of that ear problem was removing a scar that appeared behind his ear from the mastoidectomy he had when he was 5.5. Just simply by pulling the skin tight and they sewed it up behind the ear, you couldn't see that scar anymore. So they got rid of it. So here you have the exhumation of Lee Oswald coming sometime later because they said in the autopsy they couldn't see the scar. And of course they find the body there and they see that there's a mastoidectomy. You can see it on the skull, Also, someone said, "Oh my gosh, the head has been disconnected from the body, and maybe they replaced the skull with somebody else's." No, this happens whenever you lift a skeleton. The weight of the skull will often will snap the connection to the bones, in the neck because it's so heavy. So there are many people who don't understand your physics or they don't understand anatomy and everything. And I just felt very badly that Lee was exhumed. Instead of being allowed to rest in peace, because of silly reports that people that don't know what really happened. He had scars removed from his body that had been identified. So
I was going to ask you if you thought that was disinfo, the whole, different body in the grave thing, because that...
no, it's him.
Okay.
The dental record, this is gross because, people don't understand. Do you know that a friend of mine gave me for my birthday and thought it was something nice? They gave me a headline saying Kennedy assassinated, blah, 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 and so on. That was the worst day of my life, practically. The last thing I ever want to see is something like that. It's very hard for people to understand my position. I love this man. I cared about him. I do not want to see how we failed because we tried to save Kennedy's life. It's awful,
Well, you know what? I don't think he failed if we get his message out, Judyth. And I don't think that Lee will have died in vain if we get his message out. And that's one of the reasons that I pursue the interview with you, because it's important to me that people see the truth. Look, if Lee Oswald was a bad guy, then I would, and that was how he really was, I would show him as a bad guy, because that's how he was. But the research I've done, Lee was not a bad guy. Even Jim Garrison defended him.
That's right.
So, I mean,
there's so much about Lee that has been misconstrued, and I remember one person saying, that he watched a fish die, when he was a kid, and all that. And I thought that was peculiar, because Lee even told me about this incident. He lost his faith that there was a God, because he realized that he had power like over a fish. In his mind, God is going to be such a magnificent and enormous figure that we're nothing but like ants to him. Why would he care? And when you remember, we were only a couple decades away from Hitler's extermination camps. They were strong on our minds. We could see the capacity that man had to kill and harm man without any apparent intervention from God. Yet Lee asked me to pray for him in November 20th, just 2 days before the assassination. Actually, less than that, 37 and a half hours approximately before the assassination. Lee asked me to pray for him. He's crying out for any help he can get. And I wanted him to just run. He said, if I do that, everybody he cared about would end up dead. They'd kill him. There's a man informant named Lee, who saved Kennedy's life in Chicago by, informing the FBI. Kennedy lived 3 extra weeks. In that time, he was able to give his speech, to American University and other things. They're very important. I believe he did that speech before he went to Chicago. I know, if not, it was just before that. But at any rate, Kennedy also did some other things. He also signed the act to bring back troops from Vietnam. There are things that Kennedy accomplished. We had 3 more weeks because of Lee Oswald.
So Lee is a hero, not only once, but twice, because he ended up dying trying to protect Kennedy. And that's important for people to know that, again, Oswald was not this, little nasty, man that, was wimpy and, he decided to kill the president because he was a coward and all that. No, that couldn't be further from the truth. It's very important that people know the truth about Lee Oswald, because the man not only did he stop it from happening once, he, like Judyth just said, he gave us extra time and allowed for extra things to be done. Lord knows how that changed history. I mean, everything has an effect. So this man, and they know he was a hero, they know he was a good person, and they set him up because the powers that be do not care. They're evil, and they do not care. Look what they did. They forced Ruby to shoot him. I mean, Ruby said plenty of times.
Jack Ruby did not want to kill. This is someone he knew for years. Jack Ruby, I met Jack Ruby. I thought he was Sparky Rubenstein at the time. Nobody dissuaded me as to or told me his real name at the time. But my gosh, he liked Lee. In fact, of course, it's on record that somebody who's been identified as Jack Ruby called twice, saying they're going to shoot him if, they're going to kill him if they transfer him. But of course they did it anyway. They wanted him to die. Nobody could be more open. You have that perp walk going on, and on both sides, no guns are drawn. There's no protection for Lee. Nobody in front protecting him from any frontal assault. Lee turns his head. You can see it in some of the films. And you can see he's looking right at Jack Ruby. But Jack, what they told me? Dave Ferry told me after this was over. He said, please think of it this way. He said, Jack Ruby, he'd forgotten that I didn't know that Jack Ruby and Sparky Rubenstein were the same person. He said, they were trying to make me feel better. They said it was like a mercy killing, that once he got transferred to the others, to the county, instead of from the city jail to the county, that he would have been tortured, probably to death, because he would never have admitted that Kennedy, that he shot Kennedy. They would have tortured him horribly.